you host this show today. Okay. So Mayank hosts it today. Anisha maybe hosts it next time, and so does Anshu at some time, and Yash the next weekend, and Shubham next weekend to that, right? Um, or everyone says like, hey, I'm probably good at getting guests, but I'm not good at hosting. I don't know how to ask questions. I'm not good at research, but I know a lot of people. Let me get you the host for the next, for the next weekend session. Okay, so everyone has some superpowers, right? But everyone may not be able to take decisions. Okay, so ideally it's best like if some people take decisions, but people should not be taking decisions only on what they think. Okay, it has to be a collective wisdom. Okay, so maybe you prepared the questions, but or maybe like a lot of people put up those questions together and gave them to you, right? And then you may be tweaking some questions. You're like, okay, somebody might would have said like, why did he's a VC? How did he fail his company? Maybe, but you're putting it in a better way that hey, what happened to that company, right? So sometimes some things, some people are poised to do better over some people, right? Like, and that does not mean that all decisions need to be taken by one person, right? Like there could be within your college, there'll be different clubs, right? Different clubs would have different maybe bodies, right? Where somebody does content, somebody does events, somebody does internships, right? And so on and so forth. And different people would take decisions for different things. So even in a startup, maybe somebody takes marketing decisions, somebody takes product, tech, right, and business. And then it's good to have like somebody taking overall, at least assisting in taking all those decisions, basically, So yeah, that's practice. It's just like how a country is also run, right? Like I mean, there'll be different member of parliaments, right? There'll be different MPs, or a state is run, right? Like you have a chief minister, and there are so many MLAs, to taking care of one assembly and then feeding it back to the head essentially. So it's exactly like that.
All right. So, following that question, I would like to ask, what did you bring to the table for your startup? Like, let's say NAL developers. So, yeah, what was your specialty?
Sure. Like I said, first of all, it was not a startup. It was more like a business, right? Like it was a slow, gradual business that we built. We were just about 4 people and a bunch of contractors. So almost everything, were done by just about 2, 3 of us. But at Baya, for example, I was taking all strategic decisions on go-to-market. So everything except tech part, tech hiring, was pretty much on me in initial days of Baya, right? And at Project Step 1, I was responsible for overall fundraising, setting up partnerships with cloud telephony companies, cloud computing companies, and all different related partnerships and building the doctor network. So yeah, any startup, there'll always be different people essentially contributing to different things.
Definitely. So, moving from your scenario where you were parts of businesses and a social initiative, having some equity to your name, now you're working with a company, Times Internet. How does the shift feel like having an equity to your name at some point, and today you're on payroll? So, how is the difference like?
I think it's very lucky to be the way I'm structured and where I work. Um, I get so much of independence that I still feel that I run it, not the entire group, of course, but the entire venture arm, right? So there's so much of freedom, and because I'm on an every single day, I'm working with more founders, right? It just feels incredible. But had it been some other job where I was probably a developer or probably doing just marketing, let's say, maybe it would have been different, but I can't say that because it honestly depends on the culture that place has. So also, I think never forget that whenever you're working for yourself, you're still working for customers, so you're
Mhm.
never working for yourself in a way. you know it's easy to portray it and Netflixize it and
Mhm.
dramatize it and make it like movies, right? Of course there's a different feeling of being able to take pretty much all decisions on yourself, but never forget that it's again come boils down to what your users want, right? So there are differences for sure. Um, I've loved both the aspects, to be honest.
All right. So, talking about your role at Times Internet, what is your job position exactly like?
I am a part of the team that actually kind of decides which startup to invest in, and that's pretty much what we do pretty much every single day at Times Internet.
All right. So, okay. So I'm assuming all the research work and etc. is brought to you by your juniors. Is that right?
We have a very cool and a very different structure at Times Internet. So there's no, as a junior senior thing, where
Mhm.
we're all essentially, we all make investments here, and everybody has to do research, you know. And of course, we look at verticals, right? Like somebody looks at more mobility, somebody would look more at gaming, somebody would look at ed tech and fintech and stuff like that. So yeah, that's pretty much how it is. And at any firm, you know in particular in venture capital, of course there could be different structures. Some have a very vertical structure, some have horizontal structures, and some have a hybrid of a horizontal and vertical, right?
Mhm.
And their designations, right? um, but in the end everyone has to do 90% of the work everyone is doing is similar, so whenever you say like, hey, uh, you know even a lot of research work is actually brought to me, okay, but but you still have to do your own research. You just cannot blindly take decisions on what research has been brought to you by an analyst or an associate, okay. So at the end, wherever it may be, everyone needs to kind of use common sense, do a lot of research, talk to people, if possible, talk to prospective users, customers, existing customers. If those are individuals, then individuals. If those are enterprises, enterprises, whoever it may be, and try to learn and then take a good decision whether you want to write a check to that prospective startup or not.
I understand. So, circling in a lot of work that you mentioned, obviously not all done by the same person, but how does a day look like in a day in the life of a venture capitalist?
Sure. First of all, doing probably a lot of calls. Okay. So the most important two parts in venture capital is, first of all, getting access to a startup. You know, so a lot of VCs, for example, would visit BITS again and again and again, so that founders could reach out. That whenever they think that, hey, I'm raising capital, they reach out, right? So it's a lot of meeting people, it's a lot of events, it's a lot of connecting with people, it's a lot of filtration on who is essentially somebody you want to spend more time with, who brings in more serious companies. And everyone has a different parameter, and maybe I'm happy to explain that, right? But according to your parameter, the kind of companies you back, first of all, you have to figure out that who knows such companies and then kind of build that relationship, right? Like, so that you can get access to those companies, right? Second part is, of course, that research, right? Like having a thesis that, okay, I understand this. I want to, if there's a company happening that is solving this particular thing, I want to back that, right? Or even if you don't have a thesis, because you may not be able to have a thesis around everything, uh, tons of common sense. So tons of reading, tons of, you know, research. So these are two extremely important aspects of venture funding, basically.
All right. So, I mean, in the end, looking at a particular day, how many hours do you think you put in on an average,
I
just to
think,
get a ballpark figure?
I mean, I wish there was a way to calculate, but honestly, I think everybody in the venture industry easily puts about, 12 plus hours. Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So,
But
I
to be
mean,
honest, I think Mayank,
mhm.
I want to, since I'm seeing 10-year younger Rahuls on this call, right? I want to tell everyone one thing: do what you enjoy doing, because at least for me, I never feel tired or pissed off that why am I doing this, right? It's so much of fun to see, newer innovations, people trying to build new tools, right? That you never feel tired, right? Or when you go out to a startup meetup, you don't feel like, oh shit, one more place to go, one more person to meet. If that curiosity and that fun is not natural to you, then this industry is probably not meant for you. Um, I think this needs to come naturally. If you really enjoy this and learning about new tech, or there are verticals also in venture capital. Some companies fund only transport related companies. Some venture funds invest only in consumer brands, right? So if you're passionate about a vertical also, then you can look at a vertical. But in general, if you really enjoy to see what is really being built from scratch, then this industry is for you. Otherwise, not.
A very insightful comment. Thank you so much. So I would like to ask, like you mentioned various fields of companies that you look out for, but at the Times Internet's venture arm, do you specialize in a sector of companies or startups that you look for, or is there like you look at any possible startup?
Yeah, we typically back consumer internet companies. So anything which could be booked, bought, used over the internet is something we are very excited about. Most of you might be using an app called InShorts, News in Shorts.
Mhm.
We're the first backer of News in Shorts. Some of you, or at least a bunch of your parents or cousins would use Pratilipi, which is a massive company for essentially larger India, which is not only people who want to read in English but the regional languages. We are again the first investor in that. Some of you may play on MPL, we're a backer of that. Some of you may would have studied on Byju's, where we invested. So a lot of these products which are consumer internet. And then the other places we invest is where do you essentially, where somebody could enable consumer businesses. So we're investors in companies like Delivery, which does probably double-digit percentage of the entire deliveries made of e-commerce in this country. Or an Instamojo, which powers payments, right? So yeah, either businesses that allow consumers to use the internet and kind of transact, or essentially businesses that are purely online.
All right. Just one thing I noticed in the kind of startups you look for, there is no mention of things you can rent out. So I guess your previous experience and personal taste doesn't fit in, or how do you put in your one bit there?
Not necessarily. I mean, renting is not an easy space, and again, like I said, like unit economics. If the unit economics doesn't work, we at least don't like to invest in companies where unit economics doesn't work, because it is completely fine for any VC to take a bet that this will make money after 2 years or 3 years or maybe 4 years, maybe 5 years or 6 years. But if you feel that this company is not going to make money in a really long term, as well, then perhaps at least we stay away from those businesses.
So I guess that is your view for rental companies in overall.
Well, it'll depend renting what, you know. For example, furniture rental may make a lot of sense, you know, or furniture rental to whether it's to students for their PGs or essentially furniture rental to companies. So there are a lot of nuances you have to see, right? Like, what is the market size? How many customers are there potentially, right? You're
Hmm.
manufacturing that furniture yourself, or you're also buying it from somewhere because then you're paying a margin, right? I mean, there are a lot of things to look at, basically, and that's why, like I said, like everyone is researching. There's no shortcut to it, or there's no, that who would do the research. Just to answer your old question, everyone has to do it.
Hmm. Understood. So, I would like to know one of your biggest investments since the time you've been part at Times Internet. Which has been one of yours biggest deal that you've cracked as part of a venture capitalist?
Yeah, I think no doubts, for Times Internet, delivery has been one of the best investments for us. Been an extremely lucky to be, backing delivery, for Times Internet, because um, I think Flipkart and delivery are probably two of those companies which actually brought a lot of momentum to e-commerce in India overall. And I still feel that e-commerce is still just starting. We're going to see so much more in e-commerce in the decades to come,
Hmm.
and it's still in single digits. Indians, transacting online. I think that's perhaps going to change in a very, very, very large manner over the years to come.
So,
All right.
Rahul, when a startup comes to you, how do you evaluate it, and how do you decide when to invest? Do you look at the team, or do you look at the product market fit? What specifically do you look at?
Hi, Anisha. Great question. I think, first of all, it depends. Just to take a step back, that what stage do you invest in a company at, right? So, for example, a private equity firm like you know, Black Soil or Warburg, they would look at very different things from what a Times Internet would look at versus what an angel investor would look at. Okay. Um, so for later stages, usually people would look at, unit economics, overall leadership, you know, uh, the prospects of raising more capital. Whereas in early stages, you would practically look at, the team. Specifically, a lot of stress would be on the team. Because if the team isn't great, you're most likely supposed to fit, you know, because um, yeah, it's like a saying, right? Like in Derby, you bet on the horse, basically, right? So in a race, you're betting on the horse, that whether this horse is going to run or not, basically, right? And if you would notice, why do a lot of startups of IITs or Bitsians get funded is because it's tough to get into these colleges, and essentially, it's like a small proof point that, okay, I can continuously set a goal and attempt to achieve it. That's it. And we have funded a lot of companies which are both by probably ITNs, non-ITNs, right? So it doesn't matter to us, but you always look for some kind of a proof point that says that, okay, I know how to set a goal and to achieve it. Like if somebody tells us, hey, I'm a marathoner, I would actually put it, just as good as somebody saying that, hey, I'm from a top tier college, because building startups is hard, cracking IITJ is hard, running marathons is hard, right? So what you're really looking at is, could people do hard things, right? So that's predominantly the first and foremost thing. And second, of course, you see that, hey, is there a market for a product like this, right? Some people invent really, really cool things, right? Or for example, in my case, Baya, we were assuming, and this few users we spoke to, that particular small cohort was very excited. They were like, okay, we can't wait to order, right? And we served a few orders, but after that it faded out. We probably perhaps should have maybe spoken to a lot many more users, and also it depends on how do you do that research, basically. So it definitely boils down to how large that market is, how large competition exists, how different your product is, how are you selling it. I mean, just to give you an example, just look at different models, right? Like Netflix in India charges you monthly versus Amazon Prime's sell it like in one go, right? So there are different models, right? Like you're sachetizing something that, okay, pay me like 100 rupees a month over, paying 1,000 rupees annually together. So tons of different things, tons of different segments. So just to have that clarity is extremely important. So yeah, I mean, pretty much all of this sums down to what do you look in for a startup, but definitely there are a lot more things as well.
Oh, that's great to know. I think that's a food for thought by our young entrepreneurs here. So there are a lot of people who have asked us, being at a finance committee, that what are the steps or what are the qualifications that are required to enter into a venture capital field, and when is the best time to enter this field?
There's no standard answer that when is a good time to enter the field. I think if you really like it, right, like if it excites you, just get into it. It's as simple as that. Basically, I got into VC after about working for about 9 years of my life. I know a lot of young folks, right? Like there are a lot of Bitsians who are analysts and associates at different firms, right? A friend of mine is a Bitsian, Gaurav Mandalecha, who's actually joining a VC firm called Tanglin. I don't know, I think he just joined or he's joining in a few days. So yeah, I mean, he probably passed out of Bits, worked at Airmeet, a startup, and then he's getting into VC. Some people would essentially directly get into VC. Some people would go to a consulting firm and then get into a VC. Some people would go work somewhere, go to an MBA, and then get to a VC. So there's no standard answer. And believe me, I would never believe people who give standard answers that this is the way. And I think standard answers maybe worked at some point of time. They don't work now, okay? Because different VC firms also are, like becoming more broad-minded. I personally, whenever I'll recruit, I'm very excited to recruit people who understand user experience design, for example, or who are very good at user research, basically, right? Whereas somebody else might be saying like, hey, I need somebody who's brilliant at financial modeling, right? No standard way. I think one should attempt to go to a venture capital fund when you feel you want to. There's still a lot of, there are about north of 200 VC firms in India now, which probably used to be about 10 about a decade back. And I'm assuming there'll be another 200, 300 in the next 3 to 4 years. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities. There'll probably be about 500 VCs in India. So yeah. I'm sorry, what was your first question? I know you asked two questions together.
Yeah. I asked what are the educational qualifications that people are looking to recruit in this field?
Got it. So if I have to give you a boring answer, the engineering or a business degree and probably about 2 years of consulting experience. There are some rigid firms which are, in my opinion, which is very stupid to think like this and recruit like this. And then there are a lot of firms which are very open-minded, which would not bias you on whether you study engineering or medical or arts or whatever, okay? they hire you on the basis of common sense and how well could you research, right? In my opinion, the best way to get into VC is actually, just sorry, yeah. The best way to get into VC is actually probably start researching that if I were to invest in a company, which company would I invest in and why? If you could continue doing that, and if some of those companies do well over 3 to 4 years, I think one should be able to judge that am I a good VC or not, right? It's just like, I don't know how many of you, but some of you may be investing in stocks, right? So you just take bets, right? Like you analyze some data points that, hey, why do I want to or why do I not want to invest in Zomato, right? Why do I want to invest in a Burger King or not invest in Burger King, right? And why I say these two is like most of you probably order from both Zomato and Burger King, right? So it's something you would connect to, and you say that, okay, I'm going to do a deep, analysis on these stocks and then see like how do they do in the long run. Same way, if you know that, somebody called Rahul Gupta is starting to build a company within Bits, right? And you interview Parth and you just chat with him and you feel like, nah, he's not going to build a great company, but but some of you think now Parth is incredible. He may be not doing that great at academics, but he understands users. He's building something really cool for students, and you guys think it's going to scale. Yeah, pen it down, man. Like pen it down that, hey, I think this is a great company. This is going to do great. And you can always shoot that email to me and to many other VCs, perhaps, because that's a proof point that you're actually interested in VC, and essentially you want to, perhaps, you are already looking for startups, basically, who are building startups. So just to go back to your question on what does a day look like I said, the first part is access, right? So it's a proof point that, hey, I have access to at least some startups and I'm evaluating them, right? So it kind of solves that dual purpose, I would say.
All right. Rahul, I would like to ask, like, in a few words, what can be the hard skills and soft skills a VC firm would look while recruiting a person?
Sure. And just to add one small thing, I also, we're recruiting a little bit of fellows. Some of you actually applied. I saw a couple of names on the call that were there who actually applied for the fellowship. The fellowship is basically a program for young students to essentially deep dive into angel investing and venture capital. So if some of you essentially want to apply, I'm happy to talk about that later. Coming back on your hard skill and soft skills, the most important soft skill, and that unfortunately majority of people in venture capital may not have on day one, I'm not saying they don't build it, is honest and polite communication. So very unfortunately, people think that, hey, we have the money, we are the decision makers, and they may not communicate very nicely with founders. So that's horrible. So leave the attitude out of the door before entering in any VC office, or in general in life as well. It's the worst thing to have. Some VCs may have that, and that's really terrible. And I know for a fact that those VCs are going to lose out on all good deals in the days to come, because no founder wants to deal with somebody who's snobbish. Hard skills, dude, like I said, like common sense is a very, very hard skill, I guess. And more importantly, trying to really understand, what the business is, like that research. And on the softer skill, I think another extremely important soft skill one requires is the art of listening, and not jumping your ideas that, hey, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? Right? Like, just listen, go back, do a little bit of more homework, and then come back, right? Instead of just jumping that, hey, this is amazing, let's do this, right? Mostly people who are pitching to you have worked on that idea for years, sometimes months. So they would usually know a lot more than you're listening to them for 5 minutes, So it's usually good that if the art of listening is a very, very important art and skill required in venture capital. Hold your horses, listen comfortably, politely ask questions, give respect. That's it. These are the thumb rules, and most important aspects in venture capital.
All right. One of the few last questions. If let's say I'm an entrepreneur with a startup, what is a couple of few things I should keep in mind while approaching a VC, or what are some of the mistakes that founders usually make you've seen?
I don't know. I mean, I seriously think that thinking for too long that how to approach is a bad thing. I mean, if you want to have a conversation, just reach out. It's as simple as that. However, the only one bad thing that it's not about founders is within this whole country overall is not being able to put things precisely, right? So most likely, if you're going to write an extremely long email stating that this is what I'm building, maybe a lot of people may not have time to read that, right? Because most of us get like 200, 300 emails a day, right? So if you can be honest and straightforward that, hey, I'm really, looking to have a conversation and I'm building, a furniture rental company for PG students, right?
Mhm.
That's it. That's sufficient, and you can say like, hey, I've already lent, 300 chairs and desks to different students, right? And I'm looking to raise, if you lend 300 chairs and desks and you write in the email, I'm looking to raise $10 million, it's probably you're never going to listen back. But essentially, if you really don't know how much you want to raise, just say like, I'm trying to understand how much money can I raise, or you say that, hey, I'm looking to raise 3 crore rupees. So yeah, I mean, just being honest and precise are two very important things, I guess. And this goes both ways for founders as well as VCs.
Understood. So, one of the final questions: what does a management structure at a VC looks like?
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it could be different for different firms. I'm going to tell you the one which is mostly prevalent because ours is very different. But it's usually, a bunch of general partners, usually maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes at larger funds, maybe about 10, Those are called general partners. They usually have the power to write a check, followed by some firms have managing directors, vice principals, but that's on a case to case, directors and this and that. But predominantly it's a GP, and then there's a P, which is a principal, So a general partner and followed by a principal. A principal may not have the power to write a check, but really helps make the final decision, followed by associates. Associates kind of help form, again, like I said, like every VC, everyone has to do everything, right? So even partners are scouting deals, principals are scouting deals, associates are scouting deals, and so are analysts, So scouting, everyone has to do, research, everyone has to do. But there's a bit of a difference. General partners would ideally take the final call, and they're usually given a presentation that, these are the 4 companies we evaluated, and we feel this is the best one, right? General partners are also responsible to raise capital, which they invest, right? So mostly associates and analysts don't have to do anything with that. In some cases, they may support that function, and in not everyone, maybe some of them, right? Because most firms would have 2 analysts, 2 associates. Some may have 1 each. Some may have only an associate. Some would have 20 associates and 10 analysts. So it depends on the size of the firm. So yeah, mostly analysts and associates do a lot of very very core research work around market sizing, who are different people building startups in similar domains, right? And also, why is a particular space interesting, right? Like, why should we as a firm go ahead and invest in a particular startup or a segment, right? And this usually is, kind of presented to a principal. A principal would ideally work with them to finally build a more concrete plan, help and perhaps do a founder call, and then finally present it to the partner, where a decision is taken that, okay, do we want to go ahead and then present it to an IC, which means an investment committee, which actually finally takes the call whether we're investing in the company or not.
Sounds really detailed. Thank you so much. I had one personal question. So, let's say you as a VC decide to invest in a startup and you see great potential and everything, but and you invest heavily, a substantial amount, and it fails. So, do you have any experience stories around that scenario?
We, of course, this happens with everyone. Every VC firm, this happens all the time. Okay, um, it's simple. Somebody attempted. You believe in it. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't work. It's as simple as that. Honestly, Um, do we feel good or bad about it? It's like a part of the game. We feel bad only that so many people are probably going to get troubled, right? Like, I mean, a lot of people need to find new jobs. A lot of it has a lot of mental, stress on the founders very specifically. So of course, it is terrible. And COVID in particular played a very heavy role in getting a lot of startups shut. So definitely, but why we don't feel terrified or I'm talking about the finances part, right? You invested probably 10 crores across 10 companies and two of them suddenly shut, right? Would we go back and cry? Most likely no, because that some other one is going to probably make 200 300 crores out of that 10 crore invested, so you are most likely still going to be, you're still going to make money. So from a financial standpoint, it's okay, right? But we're usually very good friends with most founders, so yes, there's always a tremendous amount of sadness, and perhaps we at least we guys work very closely with founders if they are kind of wrapping up a startup, because they need a lot of help even to shut a shop, right? So yeah, that's how it is.
All right. So on that note, I guess we can wrap today's session. It was very informative, personally for me, and I hope all our viewers found it interesting as well. If anyone has any questions from amongst the meet, they can ask Rahul sir right now.
Cool then. Hey,
Yeah,
if anyone has a question, I have my next call at 6. I can hang out for 5 minutes more. If you have any question, feel free to shoot.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for taking out the time and enlightening us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Krishna. All right then. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Wish you all best of
Bye.
luck.